All right, today we're going to tackle three of the most misused, misunderstood, and honestly weaponized words in our vocabulary. The goal here isn't to give you ammo for your next argument, but to build a toolkit for thinking clearly.
I mean, have you ever felt that frustration when you hear these words just thrown around? They get tossed into conversations and they lose all their meaning really fast. It gets messy.
So that's what this explainer is all about. We're going to try and cut through all that noise. We're going to build a framework together that helps us communicate with precision, turning these labels from weapons back into what they should be, useful tools.
Okay, so first things first, we have to start with a solid foundation. Let's define each of these terms, one by one, nice and clear.
First up, prejudice. The best way to think about this one is as a baseline cognitive error. It's literally a prejudgment, a mental shortcut or an assumption we make before we have all the facts. It doesn't automatically mean someone's a bad person. A lot of the time, it's just how our brains work.
So where does prejudice come from? Usually, it's just not having enough information, right? It's based on stereotypes or limited experience. It can even be unconscious. But here's the absolute key. It can be corrected. It's not set in stone. It can change when we get new information or just take a moment to think about it.
Now, what happens when that prejudice sets like concrete? Well, that's when you get bigotry. This isn't just a snap judgment anymore. We're talking about a rigid, really emotionally charged hostility toward a whole group of people. And, this is crucial, the person holding this view actively refuses to change their mind.
Yeah, this is the real kicker with bigotry. A bigot rejects new evidence. They'll hear a counterexample and say something like, "Nope, doesn't matter. I know what they're all like." It's that toxic mix, the hostility plus just digging in your heels and refusing to update your beliefs. That's bigotry.
And that brings us to our third term, racism. Now, this one is very specific. It's not just about not liking a group. Racism is an entire belief system. It's the idea that race itself determines a person's fundamental value, and that this difference justifies a social food chain, an order of superior and inferior.
You see, with racism, your race is treated like your destiny. It's not about what you do. It's about what you supposedly are. And this is so important. It doesn't have to be screaming and shouting. A quiet, calm, well-reasoned certainty that some races are just naturally better than others, that is still racism.
Okay, when you put them all side by side like this, it really starts to click, right? Prejudice is a bias, but it's often changeable. Bigotry is defined by its hostility. And racism, well, it's all about that belief in hierarchy, which, as we just saw, doesn't always have to be hostile. So you can see how, yeah, a racist is definitely prejudiced, but someone who's prejudiced isn't automatically a racist.
Okay, so we've got the definitions down. Now for the fun part. Let's test drive this toolkit in those messy, real-world gray areas where these conversations always seem to go off the rails.
Oh yeah, this one comes up all the time. Someone pulls out a statistic about a group's behavior, and suddenly the line between fact and prejudice gets super blurry. So where's the line? What's going on there?
Okay, the absolute core mistake here is taking a pattern about a group and slapping it onto an individual person you just met. Just citing a statistic, that's not racism. But using that statistic to decide you already know who someone is before they've even spoken, that is prejudice, or even bigotry. Probability can help us understand systems, sure. But character is how we judge individuals.
And here's another big one, maybe the biggest source of arguments online, reverse racism. And you know what? The reason it's so confusing is that people are usually talking past each other, using two totally different definitions of the word racism without even realizing it.
So here's the thing. Both of these are real. They just operate on totally different levels. Individual racism is about what's in your head, your personal beliefs. And yeah, anyone from any group can hold a racist belief. But systemic racism is about impact. It's about how institutions, laws, company policies, social norms create unequal outcomes. And that's why you can have two people arguing about racism, and they're both kind of right. They're just not talking about the same thing.
All right, let's elevate this conversation a little. The source material for this whole analysis offers a really powerful framework it calls the Arreqqana view. This helps us move beyond just name-calling and into a real tool for understanding.
This quote right here, this is the whole foundation. It neatly separates the three ideas. Bias or prejudice is just a part of being human. Hostility or bigotry, that's an active choice you make. And building a hierarchy based on race, that's a civic crime. Each one is a different kind of failure.
So using this lens, we can relabel our three terms not as insults, but as different types of failures. Prejudice is called Laafia skew, which is like a clouded sight, a simple cognitive error you can fix. Bigotry is norafracture, a sealed cloud. That's a willful refusal to see, which breaks trust. And racism is Talon misbind, a weaponized cloud. It's a deep moral breach that uses that distorted view to justify real-world harm. See how this builds a path to action?
Okay, this is all great in theory, right? But what's the point if it doesn't actually change how we talk to each other? So how can we use this to have better, more constructive conversations?
Well, think of this as a quick little decision tree you can run in your head. First, is the comment based on limited experience? That's probably prejudice. Okay, next step. Does the person dig in their heels and refuse to consider any other view? Now we're moving into bigotry. And finally, is the whole point of their claim to justify some kind of racial ranking? Well, then you're dealing with racism.
And this is where it gets really powerful. This gives us a way to challenge an idea without just attacking the person. Instead of yelling, you can guide them. You can ask, hey, are you talking about some bad experiences you've had, or are you saying this is just the essential nature of this entire group of people? It keeps the focus on their thinking, not on their character.
And it follows then that if the problems are different, the solutions have to be different too, right? The punishment, or rather the remedy, has to fit the failure. You handle a cognitive error, prejudice, with education and conversation. You handle a breach of trust, bigotry, with something more serious, like mediation. And a civic offense like racism, that might require real action, like losing a position of authority.
And this really leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? What if we shifted our entire goal? What if we stopped trying to win these arguments and instead focused on trying to actually repair the broken thinking that leads to all this harm in the first place?
And really, that's the whole philosophy in a nutshell. The point of getting these words right isn't about scoring points or punishing someone for being ignorant. It's about having the right tools to identify the real problem so we can effectively repair the harm it causes.